Today, we're going to explore what happens when dumb TikTokers get mauled by deadly animals. From a wealthy influencer naively entering a lion's enclosure to a couple approaching bear cubs, unaware of the mother in the background. But first, we begin in South Africa, where a woman was about to learn that elephant motherhood is a force that should never be underestimated. It was August 12, 2018. And the afternoon sun hung heavy over Kruger National Park's central plains. Heat shimmered above the dry grass, and cicadas droned faintly in the still air. Mirella da Costa had driven her rented SUV off the main tourist route onto a lesser-traveled viewing loop, easing the vehicle to a slow roll while her 3-year-old son Elian dozed in his car seat behind her. She worked part-time showing properties for a boutique real estate agency, arranging mid-range homes for young families and professionals. Outside work, most of her time centered around documenting domestic life through short videos that focused on parenting routines, sensory activities, and nature outings. With under 2,000 followers, she wasn't an influencer in any meaningful commercial sense, but she posted consistently, usually carefully staged moments that appeared spontaneous. Her clips featured Elian touching tree bark, listening to bird calls, or stacking stones near shallow streams. According to her husband, the Kruger trip was meant to provide fresh material after several weeks of indoor activities during Pretoria's winter. He later told investigators she had spent evenings researching the best self-drive routes and wildlife viewing points, creating a checklist of locations where she might safely capture footage of Elian observing animals from the vehicle. At the gate entrance that morning, rangers had specifically warned visitors about elephant activity along the central loop. A breeding herd with 3 young calves had been reported moving between watering points. Rangers emphasized that vehicles should maintain at least 150 feet of distance, and that exiting vehicles near any elephant group was strictly prohibited. Mirella had nodded and signed the standard liability waiver, though staff later noted she appeared distracted while managing Elian's seatbelt and reviewing items on her phone. When she spotted the herd around 3:30 p.m., roughly 15 elephants spread across a clearing. Witnesses in nearby vehicles observed her slow to a stop almost immediately. African elephants are the largest land animals on Earth, with adult females weighing between 6,000 and 8,000 pounds and standing up to 9 feet at the shoulder. Their social structure revolves around matriarch-led family groups with strong protective instincts toward calves. Females with young are known to react quickly to perceived threats, using body language such as ear spreading, trunk lifting, and forward stepping as escalating warnings. Mirella began recording commentary about respecting wild motherhood and how animals model protective family bonds. After wedging her phone against the SUV's passenger side mirror for stability, she unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out onto the ground beside the vehicle, leaving Elian inside. Witnesses later told rangers she stood approximately 8 feet from the door, gesturing while speaking toward the camera. The matriarch, a large female with notched ears, lifted her head almost immediately. Her trunk extended forward, testing the air. Several other females stopped grazing and turned in unison. The matriarch's ears, previously relaxed, spread wide. Dust shifted beneath her feet as she took 2 deliberate steps forward. Mirella remained focused on the phone screen. She noticed the movement, but appeared to interpret it as curiosity rather than warning. The herd tightened formation, with younger elephants moving inward. Within seconds, the calves were no longer visible from the road. The matriarch transitioned from a measured walk into a faster approach. A low rumble passed through the group, followed by a brief trumpet. Witnesses described the sound as sharp and abrupt, echoing across the clearing. At roughly 50 feet, the approach became a full charge. The ground vibrated noticeably beneath the elephant's weight. Her ears pinned back as she closed the distance in seconds. Mirella turned and lunged toward the SUV, reaching for the door handle while still clutching her phone. She did not make it inside. The matriarch struck her first, knocking her to the ground before stepping down with her full weight. The initial impact compressed her torso. A second step followed across her upper body. Inside the SUV, Elian remained restrained in his seat, crying as the herd formed a defensive barrier around the matriarch. Several females faced the vehicle directly while others shifted positions around the calves. Tourists and nearby cars contacted park authorities via emergency radio channels. Rangers arrived approximately 20 minutes later, approaching cautiously due to the herd's agitated state. Using their vehicles, they slowly encouraged the elephants to move away from the road, pausing repeatedly to avoid further escalation. The process took an additional 12 minutes. By the time rangers reached the SUV, Mirella had been dead for over half an hour. Examination indicated massive crushing trauma to the chest and skull. The incident report concluded that death would have occurred almost immediately following the initial impact. Elian was physically unharmed and later placed in temporary care while his father was contacted. The official findings classified the death as a preventable wildlife encounter resulting from visitor negligence. Morella's social media accounts were removed within a week, and the recovered footage from her phone was retained by park authorities as part of the internal record. The elephant charged from 50 feet. In a Lahore compound, a captive lion would need less distance to correct a wealthy heir. It was December 3rd, 2017, and the evening air in Lahore carried the scent of dust and diesel as Xavian Ralph stepped through the inner gate into his cousin's concrete-walled enclosure. He held a wooden stick in one hand and his phone raised in the other, its camera already recording as voices from the courtyard echoed behind him. Xavian was a 22-year-old from one of Lahore's established textile families, the youngest of 3 sons. He had recently begun posting short-form videos that documented a pattern of increasingly reckless stunts performed mainly for his immediate social circle. That evening's gathering was at his cousin Hamza's private compound, on the edge of a newly developed residential extension. The property was surrounded by high perimeter walls and included an improvised animal enclosure behind a secondary courtyard. Hamza, 10 years older and involved in loosely regulated business ventures, kept a male lion there as a personal status symbol. Despite national wildlife protection laws, private ownership of exotic animals persisted in certain affluent circles. Xavian had visited the compound before and had previously filmed himself standing near the enclosure's outer wall. On this occasion, with several friends present and alcohol circulating, he announced his intention to enter the enclosure itself. Witnesses later said the declaration began as a joke, but quickly shifted into a challenge when Hamza discouraged him. African lions, even young males, can weigh between 330 and 550 pounds, with this particular animal estimated at around 400 pounds. Their canine teeth can reach lengths of 3 inches, and are adapted to puncture and hold. Even when raised in captivity, lions retain their predatory reflexes and defensive responses to perceived threats within their space. Hamza initially refused Xavian's request. The lion, named Sher, had been fed earlier that afternoon, but had shown heightened agitation in recent weeks. A handler who visited twice daily had warned that Sher had begun charging the gate during routine feeding. Hamza relayed this warning to Xavian and urged him to remain outside the barrier. Xavian dismissed the concern. When Hamza remained firm, he turned to 2 friends nearby, suggesting the refusal was excessive. In the presence of the group, the conversation shifted tone. The friends, influenced by the atmosphere and alcohol, agreed to assist. The enclosure's side gate was secured with a padlock and chain. Hamza kept a spare key hanging on a hook in the outdoor kitchen. While Hamza stepped inside the house to take a phone call, one of the friends retrieved it. Xavian entered the enclosure with deliberate posture, shoulders back, walking in a wide arc, rather than directly toward the lion. Sher remained in a shaded corner, resting but alert. Xavian spoke loudly toward his phone, explaining to viewers that confidence and vocal presence established dominance. He began slapping the stick against his palm. Sher's ears flattened slightly, and his tail began a slow, repetitive flick. These signs indicated agitation, though Xavian appeared not to recognize them. For nearly 30 seconds, Xavian paced in the center of the enclosure, while Sher remained still. He then struck the concrete floor twice with the stick. The sharp cracks echoed off the walls. He advanced 3 steps while continuing to speak loudly. Sher's body tensed, muscles shifting beneath his coat. Xavian struck the ground again, now roughly 6 feet from the lion. Sher rose to his feet, revealing his full height and mass. Xavian paused briefly, taking a half step backward that was visible in the recording, before moving forward again. He extended the stick as though intending to touch the lion's shoulder. Sher's forepaw struck with sudden speed, knocking the stick aside. It skidded across the concrete and struck the far wall. Xavian stumbled backward. Before he could regain balance, Sher lunged forward in 2 strides. His chest collided with Xavian's torso, driving him downward. As Xavian fell, Sher's jaws closed around his throat. The immediate effect was visible as Xavian's body stiffened. His hands rose toward the lion's head, gripping at the mane and jaw without effect. Sher maintained the hold and dragged Xavian across the enclosure toward the shaded corner. His hind legs pushed against the concrete to adjust his position. After repositioning, Sher delivered a single powerful headshake. Xavian's body became limp. Outside the enclosure, friends had begun shouting during the lunge. Several threw objects, shoes, a metal tray, and other items, over the wall. One friend contacted a private veterinary professional who had previously assisted Hamza. The veterinarian declined to attend without police and a tranquilizer team and advised contacting authorities. Emergency services were called shortly afterward. Local police arrived 27 minutes later. By that time, Sher had released Xavian and retreated to his resting area. Officers secured the compound and requested wildlife authorities. A tranquilizer team arrived nearly an hour after the initial call. Once Sher was sedated, medical personnel entered the enclosure. Xavian was pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities charged Hamza with illegal possession and unsafe containment of a wild animal. Proceedings were resolved quietly through legal negotiations. The compound was closed, and Sher was transferred to a licensed facility. Reports later indicated the lion's health had deteriorated due to long-term confinement, and he died several months afterward. The friends present were physically unharmed, but reportedly avoided discussing the event afterward. Several removed related recordings from their devices. Confidence failed at the compound gate, killing Xavian. Meanwhile, in Blantyre, a 31-year-old massage therapist would test whether ancestral spirits could stop a crocodile's roll. It was November 9, 2018, and the Shire River moved with deceptive calm through Blantyre, its brown surface sliding past reed beds and worn banks. Beneath the still water, shapes moved unseen. By dawn's full light, the quiet stretch would become the site of an event that forced nearby residents to confront the fragile boundary between belief and physical risk. Tafika Nyondo was a 31-year-old wellness massage therapist who operated out of a modest apartment in the Xinghuanghua district. His work focused on relieving muscular tension for office workers and expatriates, but he also shared short spiritual reflections online. His clips featured guided breathing, discussions of ancestral connection, and simple rituals drawn from traditions he had studied with local healers over several years. Clients described him as soft-spoken, yet deeply committed to his beliefs. He approached spiritual practice not as performance, but as a personal discipline. Over time, he documented ceremonies and reflections for a small but attentive audience who followed his journey toward what he described as balance between body and spirit. This visit to the river was intended as a cleansing ritual he had discussed with several clients. He explained that immersion in natural water would strengthen his connection with ancestral protection. His mother had urged him to remain at the shoreline, but Tafika believed full immersion was necessary. Although he had performed similar rituals before, he had never done so alone at this particular stretch of river. Shortly before sunrise, several fishermen were preparing nets along the bank when Tafika arrived around 5:40 a.m. His phone was already recording. One fisherman, Chisomo, who had worked these waters for decades, approached and warned him that this section was known for crocodile activity. Recent livestock losses had been reported nearby. Tafika listened, but responded calmly that he trusted spiritual protection. The fishermen exchanged uneasy glances. None possessed equipment that would allow safe intervention if a crocodile attacked. Nile crocodiles can reach lengths of up to approximately 16 feet and weigh over 1,500 pounds. They are ambush predators capable of remaining nearly motionless, with only eyes and nostrils exposed. When attacking, they rely on sudden bursts of speed to seize prey before dragging it into deeper water. A common hunting behavior is the death roll, in which the crocodile spins to subdue and disorient a victim. Tafika waded into the shallows and placed his phone on a flat rock angled toward the water. The fisherman shifted slightly upstream, but continued to watch. The water rose from his knees to his thighs as he raised his arms and began chanting. Several fishermen called out again, pointing behind him toward the water's surface. Tafika turned briefly, then resumed his ritual. A faint, V-shaped ripple approached from behind, at a distance of roughly 40 feet. The attack occurred without audible warning. One moment, Tafika stood waist-deep, his voice carrying across the river. The next, a crocodile surged upward, jaws closing across his abdomen and lower ribs. The force bent him forward and drove air from his lungs. His hands moved instinctively toward the animal's snout, but the scaled surface offered no grip. Witnesses saw the crocodile initiate a rapid roll. Tafika's body was pulled sideways as the animal twisted, turning him through the water. The surface churned violently. For a brief moment, his feet appeared to find the riverbed before losing contact. The crocodile executed another rotation and pulled him fully beneath the surface. The water calmed abruptly. One arm surfaced several feet away, fingers extended before slipping back under. Moments later, the crocodile surfaced downstream and adjusted its hold. The fisherman reported seeing brief movement that suggested involuntary muscle response. The animal submerged again, maintaining the grip used to drown prey. Chisomo used his waterproof cased phone to call local authorities. The others scanned the shoreline but did not enter the water. Rescue teams arrived more than 40 minutes later, By then, the river had returned to its earlier stillness. Divers conducted a search in murky, silted water, complicated by submerged debris. After approximately 3 hours, Tafika's body was located downstream, caught against river obstacles roughly 150 feet from where the attack began. Medical examination documented severe trauma to the torso and multiple fractured ribs consistent with a crocodile bite. The cause of death was determined to be drowning following catastrophic injury. In the weeks that followed, community leaders held informal gatherings along the riverbank to emphasize caution near known wildlife zones. Tafika's phone was recovered from the rock where he had placed it and retained by authorities. Chanting stopped when the crocodile rolled. But in the Zambezi shallows, a bartender's wave toward boat guides became his last gesture before a hippo's jaws opened. It was July 22nd, 2018, and the Zambezi River caught the last rays of African sunlight, turning the shallows near Livingston into liquid gold. Lauren Kabila, a 24-year-old bartender from Lusaka, stood waist-deep in the water. Within minutes, the river would transform from a perfect backdrop into the site of one of the most violent animal attacks in Zambia that year. Lauren worked seasonal bartending jobs along Zambia's tourist corridor, moving between lodges and hotels as demand required. His TikTok featured dance clips filmed in exotic locations during his off hours. He performed brief choreographed routines against sunsets, waterfalls, and wildlife landscapes, often recording multiple takes until satisfied with the lighting and framing. This trip to Livingston was meant to capitalize on the area's natural beauty before his contract at a nearby hotel ended in August. Co-workers later said he had scouted this particular bend in the Zambezi for 3 days, noting how the evening light hit the water and how the distant mist from the falls created a striking backdrop. Local guides had warned him about the hippos that frequented these shallows during evening hours, but Lauren said he would only be there briefly to capture his footage. Hippopotamuses, despite their herbivorous diet, are responsible for hundreds of human deaths in Africa each year. Bulls can weigh up to 6,600 pounds and, contrary to their lumbering appearance on land, move through water with surprising speed and agility. Their massive jaws can open to 150 degrees, revealing canine teeth up to 20 inches long designed to crush and tear. That evening, Lauren arrived at his chosen spot around 6:15 p.m., wading out until the water reached the middle of his torso. A group of tourists in a boat approximately 80 yards upriver noticed him almost immediately. The boat's guide recognized the danger at once. Several hippos had been spotted in the area throughout the day, and the shallows Lauren had entered were part of a route they commonly used to access grazing areas on the opposite bank. The guide began shouting warnings across the water, his voice carrying clearly in the evening air. The tourists added their voices, waving their arms. Lauren turned toward them, his phone still recording, and waved back with what witnesses later described as a dismissive gesture. He adjusted his phone's position and resumed his routine as the sun continued its descent. Behind him, barely visible in the murky water, the surface shifted as something massive moved beneath. The hippo had been resting in deeper water nearby and had detected the disturbance Lauren created. To the bull, this human represented an intrusion into his territory during the sensitive period when hippos leave their daytime refuges. The animal began moving toward Lauren with deliberate purpose. The guide's shouts became more urgent. He started the boat's motor, intending to move closer and force Lauren to pay attention. But the distance was too great, and what followed unfolded quickly. The hippo surged forward from roughly 15 feet behind Lauren, its massive head breaking the surface as it closed the distance in seconds. Its jaws opened wide during the forward rush, revealing the large canines that lined its mouth. The impact drove Lauren forward in the water before the jaws clamped shut across his torso, spanning from his lower ribs to his pelvis. The crushing force was immediate. Witnesses in the guide's boat saw the hippo lift Lauren partially out of the water, his body bent backward over the animal's lower jaw, his arms flailing. The hippo held him for several seconds before releasing him, and Lauren fell face first into the river. He attempted to right himself, his movements weak and uncoordinated. The hippo had submerged again, and for a moment the tourists hoped the attack had ended. Then the water broke again as the bull surged upward beneath Lauren's struggling form. This time the jaws closed at shoulder level, the teeth penetrating his back and chest. The hippo shook its head once in a lateral motion before pushing him sideways through the water and releasing him again. After the second bite, Lauren stopped moving. His body floated face down, drifting slowly with the current. The hippo remained nearby briefly before moving toward deeper water. The guide radioed for emergency services immediately. Park rangers and paramedics arrived by boat and recovered Lauren's body from the shallows where it had drifted into a reed bed roughly 30 yards from the attack site. His phone was found floating nearby, its waterproof case still sealed. The final video showing the entire incident until the moment of first impact when the device was knocked from his grip. Death was attributed to traumatic blood loss and catastrophic internal injuries, likely occurring within minutes. Authorities closed that section of the Zambezi to recreational access for 3 weeks while wildlife officers monitored hippo activity in the area. The bull responsible was identified by scarring patterns but was not destroyed, as officials determined he had been acting in territorial defense. Warning signs were installed at multiple access points along the shore, describing the danger of entering hippo pathways during evening hours. The recovered phone and video footage were secured by authorities, forwarded to Lauren's parents, and never released publicly. The Zambezi swallowed the dancer who dismissed the shouts, but weeks before that twilight bite, a couple on a Sochi Forest Road crouched for bear cubs and met what raised them. It was May 14, 2018, and the late afternoon sun filtered through the birch and fir trees lining the remote forest access road outside Sochi, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. Arsen Vetro and Mila Danik had driven this route to avoid highway tolls, their aging Lada packed with camping gear and camera equipment, completely unaware that the next 15 minutes would end horrifically. Arsen Vetro, 29, was a freelance videographer from Rostov-on-Don who had built a modest following documenting budget travel across Russia's wilderness regions. His partner, both romantically and professionally, was Mila Danik, 27, a former marketing assistant who had quit her corporate job 8 months earlier to join Arsen full-time. Their TikTok channel focused on accessible adventure travel clips, showing viewers how to explore Russia's national parks and forests without expensive tour packages. Arsen's approach was hands-on and intimate. He prided himself on getting close to wildlife, often closer than professional nature photographers would recommend, believing his calm demeanor kept animals at ease. The couple had spent the previous 2 nights camping in the Caucasus forests, filming content for an upcoming series on off-the-beaten-path routes to the Black Sea coast. Their social media posts from that morning showed them cooking breakfast over a portable stove, with Arsen joking about bear safety in a way that suggested familiarity rather than genuine concern. He had encountered bears twice before during previous trips, both times watching from a distance as the animals moved away. Brown bears in the Caucasus region can weigh up to 660 pounds, with females typically ranging between 220 and 330 pounds. Despite their bulk, they can accelerate to speeds of 35 miles per hour in short bursts. Their forepaws, equipped with claws up to 4 inches long, deliver strikes powerful enough to break a moose's spine. Mother bears with cubs are particularly dangerous during late spring, when cubs are old enough to venture from the den, but still entirely dependent on maternal protection. Studies show that 70% of fatal bear attacks involve sows defending their young, and these attacks are characterized by explosive aggression with little warning. That afternoon, as Arsen rounded a curve doing barely 20 miles per hour, Mila spotted movement at the roadside and told him to stop. 2 brown bear cubs, each roughly the size of a large dog, were visible just off the shoulder, pawing at something in the underbrush. Arsen pulled onto the narrow shoulder, leaving the engine running. Local forestry officials had posted warnings at the road's entrance about increased bear activity during denning season, but the signs were weathered to near illegibility. A truck driver who passed them minutes before the attack later told investigators he had honked and gestured for them to keep moving, but Arsen had simply waved back. Mila grabbed their camera and began recording through the open passenger window. Arsen stepped out of the car and walked slowly toward the cubs with his body lowered in a crouch, a posture he believed made him appear non-threatening. The cubs, probably 3 to 4 months old, paused their foraging to watch him. At approximately 15 feet away, Arsen stopped and crouched lower, extending one hand. The cubs backed away slightly, their ears flattening. Then, a sharp crack of breaking brush came from the tree line to the left, perhaps 30 feet from where Arsen crouched. The mother bear exploded from cover with terrifying speed, her bulk moving faster than seemed physically possible. Arsen began to turn toward the sound, rising from his crouch, but the sow closed the distance in under 2 seconds. Her first strike caught him across the upper back with her right forepaw. The force drove Arsen forward and down, his face slamming into the ground hard enough that his nose shattered on impact, blood immediately pooling beneath his head. Before he could attempt to protect himself or roll away, the bear was on him. She bit down on his left shoulder and the side of his neck, a powerful, crushing bite. The bite crushed his clavicle instantly and severed the carotid artery, sending arterial spray across the dirt road. The bear's weight, approximately 290 pounds as later estimated by wildlife officials, pinned Arsen completely. She shook him violently, a force that left his body limp. The entire initial attack lasted less than 6 seconds. Mila screamed as she scrambled back inside the car, managing to get the door closed just as the bear lifted her head from Arsen's body. The sow delivered another powerful swipe across his back. her claws tearing through his jacket and opening deep gashes from shoulder blade to lower ribs. She then nudged his body with her snout, rolling him slightly, before releasing a series of huffing vocalizations that brought the cubs quickly to her side. The three bears disappeared into the forest, leaving Arson's body motionless on the road. Mila, her hands shaking violently, dialed emergency services. A nearby forestry patrol reached the road quickly and coordinated EMS. Emergency responders arrived 34 minutes after her call, but could only confirm death at the scene. Time of death was estimated to have occurred within 30 seconds of the initial attack due to massive blood loss and likely immediate unconsciousness from the neck trauma. Authorities closed the forest access road for 6 days while wildlife officers monitored the area. The bear and her cubs were tracked but not destroyed, as officials determined the attack was a defensive response consistent with maternal protection behavior. The camera footage became part of the official record, but was never released to the public at Mila's request. She returned to Rostov-on-Don 2 weeks after the attack and ceased all social media activity. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here.